As Sarah's 5 children lay dying in the merciless Colorado blizzard, the approaching Apache warrior offered their only chance at survival. His tribe would save them from death's icy grip, but demanded payment in the form of knowledge only she could provide. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Colorado Territory, winter of 1876. The wind howled like a wounded beast across the snow-covered plains, carrying with it ice crystals that bit into any exposed flesh with merciless fury. The sky hung low and heavy, a grey ceiling that seemed to press down upon the earth, smothering all beneath its weight. In this desolation, a lone figure moved steadily through the blinding white, his broad shoulders hunched against the relentless assault of the elements. Morning Thunder had seen 42 winters come and go, each one etching new lines into his weathered face, each one teaching him new ways to survive. The Apache scout's dark eyes, sharp as an eagle's, scanned the horizon with practiced vigilance. His horse, a sturdy pinto with frost clinging to its mane, trudged forward with dogged determination, trusting its rider's guidance even when the trail disappeared beneath fresh drifts. He should not have been traveling in such weather. His people, camped in a sheltered valley 3 days' ride to the north, would be gathered around fires, telling stories of summers past while they waited for spring's distant promise. But Morning Thunder had been away, serving as scout for the white man's army, a necessary compromise to protect his tribe in changing times. Now he was returning with news, supplies, and the weight of divided loyalties heavy on his shoulders. Just a bit further, he murmured to his horse in Apache, his voice immediately swallowed by the wind. We will find shelter before nightfall. That was when he saw it, a shape too angular to be natural, half buried in snow against a backdrop of bare cottonwoods. Morning Thunder narrowed his eyes, considering whether to bypass this anomaly. Curiosity won. He guided his mount toward the mysterious form. As he drew closer, his experienced eyes discerned the broken remains of a wagon, its canvas covering torn and flapping wildly in the wind. One wheel was shattered, the axle buried in snow. No horses were visible, a settler's wagon abandoned. Morning Thunder dismounted carefully, one hand resting on the knife at his belt. The army had warned of bandits in these parts, desperate men made more dangerous by winter's privations. He approached with caution, his moccasined feet making little sound in the deep snow. "Hello?" he called out in English, the word strange and harsh on his tongue. No response came but the moaning wind. He was about to remount when he heard it, a sound so faint it might have been imagination, a child's whimper. Morning Thunder moved swiftly then, pulling back the frozen canvas with strong hands. What he found inside made even his stoic heart clench with pity. Huddled together in a nest of blankets and clothing were 6 figures. A woman, deathly pale with chapped blue lips, held an infant to her chest. Around her, 4 children of varying ages pressed close, their small bodies shivering violently, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. The woman looked up at him, and Morning Thunder saw not terror at his appearance, but the dull resignation of one who has already accepted death. Only when her gaze shifted to her children did a spark of desperate hope flicker in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracked and weak. "My children." Morning Thunder understood sacrifice. He understood duty. Looking at the woman's frost-bitten fingers and the children's hollow cheeks, he made his decision instantly, though he knew it might not be welcomed by his people. "I help," he said in his limited English. "My people camp. 3 days, you come." Relief and suspicion warred on the woman's face. "My husband," she began, then stopped, her eyes filling with tears that froze on her cheeks. He's gone. Pneumonia. 3 weeks passed. We were headed to my brother's homestead when the storm... She gestured weakly at their surroundings. Morning Thunder nodded once. Death was a companion familiar to all peoples. Your name? He asked. Sarah? Sarah Wilkins. Her cracked lips formed the names of her children. Thomas is 10. Emma, 8. The twins, James and John, are 6. And baby Ruth is just 9 months. The scout assessed the situation quickly. Night would fall within hours. The temperature would drop further. None of them would survive until morning in this broken shelter. No time, he said firmly. We go now. Sarah tried to stand but collapsed back into the blankets, her strength gone. Morning Thunder made swift preparations, securing the most essential belongings on his horse. He fashioned a carrier for the baby from his own buffalo hide coat, strapping the infant securely to his chest where his body heat would keep her warm. To the older children, he gave clear instructions through gestures and simple words, showing them how to wrap their faces against the wind and walk in his footsteps. Thomas, the eldest boy, watched him with wary eyes but nodded his understanding. Finally, Morning Thunder turned to Sarah. Without asking permission, he lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, wasted by hunger and cold. My children, she protested weakly. They follow, he assured her, his dark eyes holding hers. You trust Morning Thunder. It wasn't a question, but Sarah nodded, surrendering to this stranger's strength as the last of her reserves failed her. As they set out into the swirling snow, the Apache scout felt the weight of responsibility settle on him like a heavy blanket. Behind them, the abandoned wagon disappeared into whiteness. Ahead lay uncertainty, a 3-day journey through perilous conditions, and beyond that, the judgment of his tribe. Morning Thunder had survived 42 winters by respecting the land's harsh wisdom. The weak perished, only the strong endured. Yet something deeper than survival drove him now, a principle his grandfather had taught him long ago beside a different fire, in a world that seemed increasingly distant. Even in the coldest winter, the old man had said, a warrior's heart must remain warm. For if compassion dies, we are no longer Apache, we are just men fighting against the wind. The first day of their journey was measured not in miles, but in heartbeats, in labored breaths that hung like ghosts in the frigid air. Morning Thunder led them toward a small cluster of pine trees, where they might find some shelter from the wind's constant assault. The children followed in his tracks, Thomas vigilant and protective, Emma sobbing quietly, the twins clinging to each other with frozen fingers. Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness in Morning Thunder's arms, her skin unnaturally cold against his. The infant strapped to his chest whimpered occasionally, but remained blessedly quiet, soothed perhaps by the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Stay awake, Morning Thunder commanded when he felt Sarah's head loll against his shoulder. Night comes, must stay awake. She stirred at his voice, her eyelids fluttering. The children, she murmured, please watch over my children. I watch all, he promised, adjusting his grip to keep her more secure. By the time they reached the pines, the day's weak light was already fading. Morning Thunder worked quickly, clearing snow beneath the densest trees and building a shelter of branches. He unloaded his sparse provisions, keeping a careful eye on the children who stood huddled together, shivering and lost. Thomas! He called to the eldest boy, who straightened at the sound of his name. Help gather wood! The boy hesitated, glancing at his mother, who lay wrapped in blankets in the makeshift shelter. She needs fire, Morning Thunder explained simply. You help. She lives. Understanding flashed in the boy's eyes. He nodded and began collecting fallen branches with determined focus. Morning Thunder nodded approvingly. This one had a warrior's spirit. With practiced efficiency, Morning Thunder started a small fire, shielding the precious flame from the wind until it caught. As warmth and light bloomed in their small sanctuary, he saw the children's faces clearly for the first time. Their cheeks were hollow, their eyes too large, marked by days of insufficient food and fear. "Eat," he said, producing pemmican from his supplies. Small bites, slow. As they huddled around the fire, Morning Thunder prepared a medicinal tea from herbs he carried. He lifted Sarah's head gently, bringing the steaming brew to her cracked lips. "Drink," he instructed. "Medicine good, help blood flow." Sarah sipped obediently, grimacing at the bitter taste. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still weak but clearer than before. "We would have died today if not for you." Morning Thunder shrugged off her gratitude. "Not safe yet." Long journey still? As the fire crackled and night enveloped them, Emma, the 8-year-old girl, edged closer to Morning Thunder. Her small face was a map of uncertainty, but curiosity overcame fear. "Are you an Indian?" she asked suddenly. "Emma," Thomas hissed, scandalized by his sister's boldness. Morning Thunder's expression remained impassive, but a flicker of amusement warmed his eyes. "I am Apache," he corrected gently. "My name is Morning Thunder." "That's a beautiful name," Sarah said softly from her place by the fire. "I'm sorry, we haven't properly introduced ourselves. I'm Sarah Wilkins. My husband Robert and I were traveling from Pennsylvania to meet my brother in Colorado Springs when—" Her voice faltered. The sickness took him fast. Thomas finished for his mother, his young voice trying to sound strong. "Pa was fine one day, then coughing the next, and then—" Morning Thunder nodded. The white man's coughing sickness was a familiar enemy, one that had claimed many of his own people. "3 weeks we've been trying to find our way," Sarah continued. "The maps Robert had, I couldn't make sense of them. Then the wheel broke and the horses ran off in the night. I thought we were going to die out here." The twins, James and John, had fallen asleep against each other, exhaustion finally overcoming their fear. Emma's eyelids drooped as she leaned against her mother's side. Only Thomas remained alert, watching Morning Thunder with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. "Your people," Sarah asked hesitantly. "Will they welcome us?" Morning Thunder stared into the flames, considering his answer carefully. He would not lie to this woman whose life now rested in his hands. "Winter is hard time," he explained. "Food scarce, many mouths to feed." He looked at her directly. "Some will not welcome, but I am scout for Chief Tall Elk. My word has weight." "And if they refuse us?" Thomas asked, speaking the fear his mother wouldn't voice. Morning Thunder's expression hardened. "Then I take you to White Settlement, but 3 more days at least." "Too dangerous for children." Sarah closed her eyes, drawing baby Ruth closer. "We'll be grateful for whatever shelter your people can provide, even if it's just for a few days until this storm passes." As the others slept, Morning Thunder kept watch, feeding the fire and listening to the wind's hungry howl. His thoughts were troubled. Chief Tall Elk was fair but pragmatic. The tribe had already lost 2 elders and a child to hunger this winter. Every portion of food was carefully rationed, bringing 5 extra mouths. 6, counting the infant, would not be a welcome surprise. Yet leaving them to die would have been unthinkable. Morning Thunder remembered his grandfather's stories of the old days, before the white settlers came in their endless waves. The Apache had roamed freely then, following the seasons, taking only what they needed from the land. Now they were confined to smaller territories, dependent on government rations that frequently failed to arrive. He glanced at Sarah's sleeping form, her arms protectively wrapped around her baby. She was different from the white women he had encountered at the forts, women who clutched their skirts in fear when he passed, or worse, looked at him with the blank dismissal reserved for creatures beneath notice. This one had courage. She had fought to keep her children alive against impossible odds. Dawn broke with grudging light, revealing a world transformed by fresh snow. Morning thunder roused the family gently. There was no time to waste. They needed to make as much distance as possible before the next storm hit. "We travel until midday, then rest," he explained as they shared a meager breakfast. "Idi must reach Cave Creek by nightfall." Sarah nodded, her face set with determination, though she could barely stand. This time she insisted on walking. "You can't carry me and lead the way. I'll manage." Morning thunder assessed her silently. Her color was better, and the medicine had reduced some of the swelling in her frost-bitten fingers. Still, she was weak. "You fall, I carry," he said finally. No argument. She accepted this compromise with a nod. As they set out into the white wilderness, Morning Thunder noticed Thomas walking close beside his mother, ready to support her if needed. The boy caught his gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, a shared responsibility, a mutual understanding. They were 7 souls against winter's wrath now, strangers bound by circumstance and survival. Morning Thunder led them northward, each step bringing them closer to an uncertain reception at his people's camp. Behind them, their footprints filled quickly with fresh snow, erasing any evidence of their passage. Like ghosts, Morning Thunder thought, they moved through a world that seemed determined to forget they had ever existed. By the 3rd day, Sarah's strength was failing. Though she never complained, Morning Thunder could see the toll each step took on her weakened body. The children, too, were reaching their limits. Even Thomas, stoic beyond his years, stumbled more frequently as they trudged through snow that sometimes reached his waist. The twins had long since surrendered to being carried, one by Morning Thunder and one by Thomas, their small faces buried against shoulders to escape the wind's bite. Only the weather had shown mercy. The threatening storm had held off, though grey clouds loomed on the horizon like patient predators. Morning Thunder knew they would not be granted another day's reprieve. "There," he said finally, pointing to a thin column of smoke rising in the distance. "My people." Sarah's exhausted face brightened momentarily before doubt clouded her eyes. "Will they truly help us?" "We will see," Morning Thunder answered honestly. As they crested the final ridge, the Apache winter camp came into view. It was smaller than Sarah had imagined, perhaps 20 hide-covered lodges arranged in a semicircle within a sheltered valley. The structures were dusted with snow, smoke rising from holes at their peaks. Between them moved figures wrapped in blankets and furs, carrying wood, tending small fires. Morning Thunder let out a series of calls, not words, but signals. Heads turned in their direction. A moment of stillness fell over the camp before several men hurried toward them, hands near weapons, expressions guarded. "Stay behind me," Morning Thunder instructed the family. "Let me speak first." The greeting party approached cautiously, 6 warriors with faces weathered by sun and wind. Their dark eyes moved from Morning Thunder to the white family with undisguised suspicion. The oldest among them, a man with grey-streaked hair and a deep scar across his left cheek, stepped forward. "Brother," he said in Apache, "you bring strangers to our winter camp. I found them dying in the snow." "Swift Knife," Morning Thunder replied in the same language. "The woman has 5 young ones. Her husband is dead." Swift Knife's gaze hardened. Our own children go hungry. The hunting has been poor. Why should we feed these white settlers who take our lands? The question hung in the air between them, sharp as the knife that gave the warrior his name. Because we are Apache, Morning Thunder answered simply. Because we do not leave children to freeze, no matter their skin. A younger warrior spat on the ground. The whites would leave our children to die without a thought. Perhaps, Morning Thunder conceded, but if we become like those we despise, what remains of our honor? Swift Knife studied the bedraggled family. The children huddled closer to their mother, sensing the tension despite not understanding the words. Chief Tall Elk will decide, he said finally, turning back toward the camp. To bring them. As they entered the camp, activity ceased. Women paused in their work, children stared openly, and elders emerged from lodges to witness the unusual procession. Sarah kept her gaze lowered, one arm around Emma, the other supporting Ruth against her chest. Thomas walked tall despite his exhaustion, trying to project a confidence he clearly didn't feel. The twins pressed against their mother's sides, overwhelmed by so many unfamiliar faces. They were led to the center of the camp, where a large lodge stood. Before it sat an older man with a dignified bearing, wrapped in a blanket decorated with intricate patterns. Though his hair was white and his face deeply lined, his eyes remained sharp, missing nothing. Chief Tall Elk, Morning Thunder greeted him with respect, speaking in Apache. I have returned with news from the fort, but also with these ones I found stranded in the storm. The chief's expression remained impassive. I see you bring not only news, but 6 hungry mouths in a time of scarcity. They would have died, Morning Thunder stated. The woman lost her husband to sickness. She tried to reach her brother's home with the children, but became lost. Their wagon broke. Chief Tall Elk studied Sarah and her children for a long moment. Do they speak our tongue? No, but the woman, Sarah, knows some Spanish. I've been speaking to her in the white man's language. The chief switched to halting English. Woman, you come to our camp. Why? Sarah looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Not by choice, sir. We were dying. Your man saved us. We ask only for shelter until the storm passes. Then we will trouble you no further. Chief Tall Elk's expression softened slightly at her directness. He turned to a woman standing nearby. Singing Bird, Morning Thunder's sister. Prepare the empty lodge of Old Fox. They will stay there until we decide. Singing Bird nodded, though her eyes revealed her displeasure. Come, she said to Sarah in accented English. And you and children follow. As Sarah and the children were led away, Chief Tall Elk motioned for Morning Thunder to remain. Other tribal leaders gathered around, their faces grim. The winter has been cruel, said Walking Bear. The medicine man. Our stores dwindle. The game has moved south. How can we feed 6 more? The woman and her children will eat what I would eat, Morning Thunder offered. We will hunt for them. And if you find nothing, as our hunters have found nothing these past weeks, countered Swift Knife, will you watch these white children eat while our own go hungry? Morning Thunder had no answer for this. The dilemma cut to the heart of his decision to bring the family here. There is another concern, added Grey Wolf, another respected elder. If these settlers die in our camp, their people will blame us. They always seek reasons to move against us. They will not die, Morning Thunder said firmly. You cannot promise this, Chief Tall Elk responded. The woman looks ill. If fever takes her... A heavy silence fell over the gathering. Each man knew the precariousness of their situation. The treaties were fragile, the army unpredictable. Any incident could be twisted to justify further restrictions on their already diminished territory. or the council will meet tonight, Chief Tall Elk decided. Until then, they may rest and eat sparingly. Morning Thunder, you will be responsible for them. I accept this responsibility, he replied, bowing his head in acknowledgement. As the group dispersed, Chief Tall Elk held Morning Thunder back with a weathered hand on his arm. When they were alone, the old chief's stern expression softened. "Your heart is good, my son," he said quietly. "But good hearts can create difficult problems. Would you have left them to die, father?" Morning Thunder asked, using the term of respect. Chief Tall Elk sighed, his breath forming a cloud in the cold air. "No, I would have done as you did. But now we must find a way through the problem your compassion has created." Morning Thunder nodded and made his way to the lodge where Sarah and her children had been taken. Outside, he found Thomas sitting alone, his back against the hide wall, watching the camp with wary eyes. "Your mother?" Morning Thunder asked, crouching beside the boy. "Resting with the little ones," Thomas answered. "That woman, the one who showed us here, she gave us some food, not much, but—" He trailed off, then looked directly at Morning Thunder. "They don't want us here." It wasn't a question, but Morning Thunder answered anyway. "Don't, times are hard. Food scarce." "I understand," Thomas said, with a maturity that gave weight to his words. "Pa always said you have to earn your place. I can work. I can help hunt or chop wood or whatever needs doing." Morning Thunder studied the boy thoughtfully. "You are your father's son. That's what Ma always says." Thomas looked down at his hands, red and chapped from the cold. "Will they make us leave?" "The council meets tonight. They decide." "And what do you think they'll decide?" Morning Thunder was silent for a moment, weighing honesty against comfort. "I do not know, but I will speak for you." Inside the lodge, Sarah sat up as Morning Thunder entered. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes were alert. The smaller children slept on beds of furs, their breathing deep and regular. "I must thank you again," she said softly, so as not to wake them. "Your people have been civil, considering our intrusion. You understand the difficulty," Morning Thunder stated rather than asked. Sarah nodded. "We're unwelcome mouths to feed in a hungry winter. I'd feel the same in their position." She brushed a strand of hair from her face. "If they ask us to leave, is there a settlement nearby we might reach?" 3 days south, too far in storm." He glanced toward the lodge entrance. "Oh, sky speaks of snow tonight. Heavy." Sarah's shoulders slumped slightly, though she quickly composed herself. "Then we must pray the council is merciful." She looked at her sleeping children. "Whatever happens, I won't forget what you've done for us." Morning Thunder shifted uncomfortably under her gratitude. In his mind, he had simply done what was necessary, what any person with honor would do. "Rest now," he said, rising to go. "Council meets at sunset." As he stepped back into the cold air, Morning Thunder looked up at the heavy clouds gathering overhead. The storm was coming, sooner than he had predicted. By morning, travel would be impossible. Whatever the council decided, the Wilkins family would be with them for at least several days. Morning Thunder could only hope that would be enough time to find a solution that would satisfy both justice and mercy. A balance as delicate and essential as the one between life and death in the brutal Colorado winter. The council fire burned bright against the gathering darkness, its flames casting long shadows across the weathered faces of the tribal leaders. 13 men sat in a circle, wrapped in blankets against the cold, their expressions solemn as stone. Outside, the first snowflakes of the promised storm began to fall, dancing on the wind before settling onto the frozen ground. Morning Thunder sat with his back straight, his face betraying nothing of the anxiety that churned within him. Beside Chief Tall Elk, the medicine man walking bear added sacred herbs to the fire, sending fragrant smoke spiraling upward to carry their words to the Creator. "We speak now of the white woman and her children," Chief Tall Elk began, his voice deep and measured. "Morning Thunder has brought them to our winter camp, asking for shelter and food when both are scarce." Swift Knife leaned forward, his scarred face harsh in the firelight. "The woman's people push us from our hunting grounds, force us onto smaller and smaller territories, and now we are asked to share our meager supplies with them. I say no. Let Morning Thunder take them to their own kind when the storm passes." Murmurs of agreement followed his words. Morning Thunder waited for them to subside before speaking. "My brothers, I have spent many moons among the white soldiers as your eyes and ears. I have seen much cruelty, yes, but also kindness. Not all whites think with one mind, just as we do not." He gestured toward the lodge where the Wilkins family rested. "This woman fought to keep her children alive against great odds. She has courage, and her children have done no harm to any Apache. Innocent they may be," countered Grey Wolf, "but innocence does not fill empty bellies. Each portion we give them is taken from our own children's mouths." "What does the medicine man say?" asked one of the younger council members, looking to Walking Bear. The old medicine man had been silent, his eyes half closed as if listening to voices only he could hear. Now he opened them fully, the firelight reflecting in their depths. "I have consulted the spirits," he said, his voice like dry leaves rustling. They speak in riddles, as spirits often do. They say, what seems a burden may become a bridge. The meaning is not clear to me, but they do not counsel sending the white family away." Chief Tall Elk nodded thoughtfully. "Morning Thunder, you know the white ways better than most among us. What skills does this woman have that might be of value?" Morning Thunder considered the question. "She reads and writes the white man's language. I have seen books among her belongings. She mentioned she was once a teacher before her marriage." A ripple of interest passed through the circle. Writing was a power the Apache respected, even as they recognized it as a tool of their oppressors. Treaties, ration cards, identification papers, the white man's marks on paper increasingly controlled their lives. "Could she teach our children these skills?" Chief Tall Elk asked. "I believe she would," Morning Thunder replied. "She seems honorable and grateful for our help." Walking Bear tapped his staff against the ground for emphasis. "This could be the bridge the spirits spoke of. Our children must learn to understand the white man's marks if they are to survive in the changing world." Swift Knife scoffed. "And what good did reading and writing do for the Cherokee, for the Cheyenne? The white man's promises are written in disappearing ink. Yet without understanding their words, we are at an even greater disadvantage," countered Grey Wolf. "Knowledge is a weapon that cannot be taken from you." Chief Tall Elk raised his hand for silence. "Let us hear all voices before deciding." For over an hour, the council deliberated. Some argued for sending the family away as soon as the weather permitted. Others saw potential value in having someone who could teach their children the white man's language and writing. A few, like Morning Thunder, spoke simply of the Apache way, of compassion and the honor that came from helping those in need. As the discussion continued, the snow fell more heavily outside, the wind's howl rising to underscore the gravity of their decision. Finally, Chief Tall Elk raised his hand again. The circle fell silent. "I have heard all voices," he said. "This is my decision. The white woman and her children will remain with us until the weather allows safe travel. In exchange for our protection and food, she will teach our children to read and write the English language." He looked at Morning Thunder. "You will tell her these terms." If she refuses, we will still shelter them through the storm, but they must leave with the first clear day." Morning Thunder bowed his head in acceptance. "It will be as you say, Chief Tall Elk." As the council dispersed, Morning Thunder remained by the fire, watching the flames dance. The decision was fair, more than fair, given their circumstances, but he wondered how Sarah would receive it. Would she see it as an opportunity or an imposition? Would she understand the honor being offered to her to share knowledge with the tribe's children? The snow was falling steadily as he made his way to the lodge where the Wilkins family had been given shelter. Outside, Thomas sat beneath a small overhang, whittling a piece of wood with a small knife. "You should be inside, out of cold," Morning Thunder said, surprised to find the boy keeping vigil. Thomas shrugged. "Ma's resting." "I wanted to know what the council decided." Morning Thunder studied the boy with new respect. "You watch over your family well. Pa always said that was my job if anything happened to him." Thomas set down his whittling. "So, do we stay or go?" "You stay," Morning Thunder confirmed. "Through winter storm, at least. But council asks something in return." Thomas tensed. "What do they want?" "Your mother was teacher, yes." "Before marriage?" The boy nodded slowly. "Back in Pennsylvania, she taught at the schoolhouse until she married Pa. Council wants her to teach our children reading, writing, English ways." Thomas's expression shifted from wariness to surprise, then thoughtful consideration. "That's all, just teaching." "It is no small thing," Morning Thunder said. "Knowledge is valued highly among my people. To share it is a great responsibility." "Ma will do it," Thomas said with conviction. "She loves teaching. She's been teaching us all our letters and some since we were little." Morning Thunder nodded. "I must speak with her directly." Inside the lodge, the air was warmer, scented with herbs that Singing Bird had provided to ease Sarah's lingering cough. The children were asleep on pallets arranged around a small central fire. Sarah sat up as Morning Thunder entered, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. "The council has met?" she asked quietly. Morning Thunder nodded, settling cross-legged across the fire from her. "They have decided you and children may stay until weather permits safe travel." He paused, studying her reaction. "In exchange, you will teach our children to read and write English." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. Whatever she had expected, it wasn't this, "Teach your children." Many in tribe believe white man's words on paper have power. Our children must understand this power if they are to survive changing times. Sarah was silent for a moment, absorbing the proposal. I would be honored," she said finally, "but I have no books, no slates or chalk. Some books were brought by missionary last summer. And we find other ways." Morning Thunder regarded her intently. "You accept this exchange?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "It seems more than fair. You're saving our lives after all." She glanced at her sleeping children. "May I ask how long we'll be permitted to stay?" "Until safe to travel. Then we help you find way to brother's home." Sarah nodded, relief evident in the softening of her features. "Thank you. Please convey my gratitude to your chief and council. I'll do my very best with the teaching." Morning Thunder stood to leave, but paused, an uncharacteristic uncertainty in his manner. "Why did you not fear me?" he asked suddenly. "When I found you in snow, most white women would fear Apache warrior." Sarah considered the question seriously. "Fear requires energy," she said at last, "and I had none to spare. All I could think about was keeping my children alive." She smiled faintly. "Besides, a monster wouldn't have stopped to help us. A monster would have kept riding." Morning Thunder absorbed her words, finding wisdom in them that resonated with his own understanding of the world. With a respectful nod, he left the lodge. Outside, the storm had intensified. Snow swirled in thick curtains, already accumulating in drifts against the lodges. Morning Thunder made his way to his own dwelling, where his sister, Singing Bird, waited with a pot of hot tea. The counsel was generous, she said, handing him a steaming cup. They were just, he corrected. The woman has skills we need. Singing Bird studied her brother's face in the dim light. You respect this white woman. It wasn't a question, but Morning Thunder answered anyway. She has strength, not of body, but of spirit. She would die for her children without hesitation, as would any mother, Apache or white, Singing Bird pointed out. Yes, perhaps in this, we are not so different. Singing Bird touched his arm gently. Be careful, brother. Respect is good, but do not forget who we are and who they are. The world outside our camp has no place for such understanding. Morning Thunder sipped his tea, letting its warmth spread through him. If the world changes, sister, perhaps we must change with it in small ways to survive. Perhaps, she conceded, though doubt lingered in her voice. Outside, the wind howled like a hungry wolf, driving snow against the walls of their shelter. But inside, Morning Thunder felt a curious sense of peace. The council's decision was wise, practical, yet honorable. The Wilkins family would have shelter, and the tribe would gain valuable knowledge. As he drifted towards sleep, Morning Thunder recalled Sarah's words, "A monster wouldn't have stopped to help us." In a world increasingly defined by division and suspicion, perhaps this simple recognition of shared humanity was its own kind of victory. Dawn broke reluctantly over the Apache camp, the sun a pale ghost behind clouds still heavy with snow. The storm had raged through the night, transforming the landscape into an alien terrain of sweeping drifts and buried pathways. No one would be traveling for many days, a fact that brought both relief and anxiety to Sarah as she prepared for her first day of teaching. In the 3 days since the council's decision, she had regained some strength. The herbal remedies provided by Walking Bear had eased her lingering cough, and regular meals, simple but nourishing, had restored some color to her cheeks. Her children, too, were adapting with the remarkable resilience of youth. The twins had already made tentative friendships with several Apache children, communication happening through gestures and shared play rather than words. Emma remained shy, but watched everything with intense curiosity. Thomas had appointed himself unofficial assistant to Morning Thunder, following the Apache scout whenever permitted and learning through observation. Now Sarah smoothed her skirt, cleaned and mended by Singing Bird, though still showing the marks of their difficult journey, and tried to calm her fluttering nerves. She had taught before, yes, but never under such unusual circumstances, never to children who spoke a different language. "You'll do wonderfully, Ma," Emma said, noting her mother's anxiety as she helped arrange the few books they had salvaged from their wagon. Sarah smiled at her daughter, touched by her perception. "I hope so, dear. It's been a long time since I stood before a class." A soft knock at the lodge entrance announced Morning Thunder's arrival. He entered with a respectful nod, followed by Walking Bear, whose wrinkled face was solemn but not unkind. "But the children gather in Council Lodge," Morning Thunder informed her. 10 young ones, ages like your Thomas and Emma." Walking Bear spoke in Apache, which Morning Thunder translated. "The medicine man says he has found these for your teaching." He handed Sarah several pieces of smoothed birch bark and small lumps of charcoal wrapped in leather. "For writing," Morning Thunder explained. "Not paper, but will serve." Sarah accepted the materials with genuine gratitude. "Thank you. These will be perfect for beginning lessons." She hesitated, then asked, "Will the parents be watching? Should I expect?" "All tribe curious," Morning Thunder confirmed, "but only Walking Bear and I stay for whole teaching. Others come, go. Some still—" He searched for the word, "not trusting." Sarah nodded her understanding. Trust would have to be earned on both sides. As they walked through the camp toward the council lodge, Sarah carried baby Ruth wrapped securely against her chest. The other children had been invited to join the lesson, Emma and the twins with the students, Thomas as a helper. The snow had been partially cleared from the central pathways, but Sarah still struggled in spots where it reached above her ankles. Without comment, Morning Thunder offered his arm for support, which she accepted after only a moment's hesitation. The council lodge was larger than the others, with space enough for tribal gatherings. Today, low benches of pine logs had been arranged in a semicircle. 10 Apache children sat waiting, their dark eyes following Sarah's every movement as she entered. Behind them stood several adults, mothers and fathers curious about this unprecedented arrangement. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Good morning," she said clearly, then looked to Morning Thunder. "Say in Apache," she requested. He translated her greeting, and Sarah repeated the Apache words carefully, earning shy smiles from some of the children. "Tell them my name is Sarah Wilkins, and I'm honored to be their teacher." Again, Morning Thunder translated, and again Sarah attempted the Apache words, her pronunciation causing a few giggles that she welcomed with a smile of her own. Starting with the basics, Sarah wrote her name on a piece of bark with charcoal and held it up. "This is how we write Sarah in English," she explained, pointing to each letter. Morning Thunder translated, though she noticed several children nodding in recognition of the concept of written symbols. For the next hour, Sarah introduced the English alphabet, drawing each letter carefully and pronouncing its sound. The children proved quick studies, especially when she turned it into a game, having them compete to recognize letters she pointed to. Emma and the twins joined in, helping to demonstrate, while Thomas assisted by distributing pieces of bark for the Apache children to practice on. By midday, most of the children could recognize and reproduce at least 5 letters, and the initial stiffness in the lodge had given way to an atmosphere of cautious enthusiasm. Even some of the observing parents nodded with approval as their children proudly displayed their first attempts at writing. When the lesson concluded, Walking Bear stepped forward and spoke at length in Apache. His tone was formal but warm. "Medicine Man says you have good spirit for teaching," Morning Thunder translated. "He says knowledge flows like water from cupped hands to thirsty mouths." Sarah blushed slightly at the poetic compliment. "Please tell him I'm grateful for the opportunity." The children are bright and eager to learn. As they left the council lodge, Sarah noticed Swift Knife watching from a distance, his expression unreadable. Morning Thunder followed her gaze and shook his head slightly. "He still doubts," he said quietly, "but others begin to see value." Back at their temporary home, Sarah found a surprising gift waiting, a small pot of stew and a basket of dried berries. Singing Bird stood nearby, her expression a careful blend of reserve and tentative acceptance. "For teacher and children," she said in halting English. "Good food, strong mind." "Thank you," Sarah replied, deeply touched by the gesture. "Won't you join us?" Singing Bird hesitated, then gave a small nod. As they shared the meal, the awkwardness between them gradually eased. Sarah's children, less constrained by adult reservations, helped bridge the gap. Baby Ruth, in particular, seemed fascinated by Singing Bird's long braids and reached for them with determined little hands. causing the Apache woman's stern features to soften into a reluctant smile. "You have strong daughters," Singing Bird observed. "Strong sons, too." "They've had to be strong," Sarah acknowledged. "We've lost much, but we still have each other." Something in those words seemed to resonate with Singing Bird. "Our people, too, have lost much. Land, freedom, many lives." She met Sarah's eyes directly. "But we remain Apache." "As you should," Sarah said softly. "Your ways, your language, they're worth preserving." Singing Bird tilted her head, studying Sarah with new interest. "Most white teachers say our ways must go. Say we must become like whites to live." "I don't believe that," Sarah said firmly. "Different doesn't mean one is better than the other. We can learn from each other without losing ourselves." After Singing Bird departed, Morning Thunder returned to check on the family. He found Sarah sitting outside the lodge, watching as Thomas and several Apache boys cleared snow from the central area of the camp. "Your son works hard," Morning Thunder observed, settling beside her on a fallen log that had been brushed clear of snow. "He feels he needs to prove himself," Sarah explained, "to earn our place here." Morning Thunder nodded his understanding. "A man's heart already." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the camp's activities. Despite the lingering tension, there was a subtle shift in how the Apache regarded the Wilkins family. Nods of acknowledgement replaced suspicious stares. One elderly woman even stopped to pat baby Ruth's cheek gently as she passed. "Your people are being more accepting than I expected," Sarah admitted. "Apache ways honor courage, honor skill," Morning Thunder explained. "You show both. Teaching is respected work." Sarah glanced at him curiously. "And what about you? What did you do before becoming a scout?" A shadow passed over Morning Thunder's face. "I was warrior, fought many battles against Mexican soldiers, then white settlers." He stared at the distant mountains. "Lost wife. 2 children in raid many winters ago." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have asked." He shook his head. "Past is past. Cannot be changed." After a moment, he added, "Becoming scout was way to protect what remains of my people. Better to know enemies' plans than be surprised again." "And is that how you see all white people? As enemies?" Sarah asked softly. Morning Thunder considered the question seriously. "Once, yes. Now." He gestured toward the children playing together, Apache and white, already finding common ground in the universal language of childhood. "And now I see people, some good, some bad, like Apache." That evening, as Sarah tucked her children into their sleeping furs, Emma asked a question that caught her off guard. "Ma, are we going to stay here forever?" Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair back from her forehead. "No, dear. When the weather clears, Morning Thunder will help us find Uncle William's homestead." "But I like it here," Emma protested. "I'm learning Apache words, and Morning Star is teaching me how to bead." Sarah smiled at the mention of the young Apache girl who had befriended her daughter. "We're guests here, Emma. This isn't our home." "Why not?" the little girl persisted. "Thomas says we can learn a lot from them." From his pallet across the lodge, Thomas spoke up. "Swift Knife and some others still don't want us here, Em. They just tolerate us because of the council's decision. But not everyone feels that way," Sarah said, mediating between her children's perspectives. "We've been shown great kindness by many." She thought of Singing Bird's gift of food, Walking Bear's words of praise, the respect shown by the children's parents. Small gestures, perhaps, but significant bridges being built between 2 worlds that had long viewed each other with fear and suspicion. Outside, the wind had died down and stars appeared in breaks between the clouds. The storm was passing, but winter still held the land firmly in its grip. Sarah knew they had weeks, perhaps months, before travel would be truly safe. In that time, what other bridges might be built? What understanding might grow between her family and these people who had taken them in, despite their own hardships? Sarah didn't have answers, only questions, and a growing sense that something important was happening here, something that transcended the immediate circumstances of their rescue and temporary shelter, something that might, in its own small way, matter. As she drifted towards sleep, Sarah found herself wondering what Robert would think of their current situation. Her late husband had been a practical man, sometimes rigid in his views, but fair-minded at heart. Would he approve of his children learning Apache ways, of his wife teaching English to those his society often dismissed as savages? She hoped he would understand that survival sometimes required opening doors rather than building walls. That humanity revealed itself most clearly in the face of adversity, when artificial boundaries fell away and people saw each other simply as fellow travelers on a difficult road. Tomorrow would bring another lesson, another opportunity to build understanding. For now, that was enough. 2 weeks passed, marked by the rhythms of daily life in the Apache winter camp. Sarah's lessons had become a fixture, expanding from simple letters and words to short sentences and basic reading. The children, both Apache and her own, flourished under her patient guidance. Even Swift Knife's son, a serious boy named Running Fox, had become one of her most dedicated students, though his father maintained his distance and disapproval. On this particular morning, Sarah introduced a new element to her teaching. With Walking Bear's permission, she had adapted several Apache stories into simple English texts that the children could practice reading. The medicine man had been initially hesitant about seeing sacred tales written down, but had relented when Sarah explained her respect for preserving their traditions accurately. "The Coyote and the Stars," read Running Fox carefully, his finger tracing beneath the charcoal words on smooth bark. "Long ago, Coyote was walking under the night sky." "Excellent," Sarah encouraged. "Continue." The boy's face glowed with concentration as he worked through the story of how Coyote had scattered the stars across the night sky from a bag he had stolen from the Creator. When he finished, the other children applauded, and even Walking Bear nodded his approval from where he sat observing the lesson. "You honor our stories," the medicine man said through Morning Thunder's translation. "You do not change them to fit white ways." "They're beautiful stories," Sarah replied sincerely. "They deserve to be preserved as they are." After the lesson, Sarah found Thomas helping a group of Apache men repair a damaged lodge. Her son worked alongside them with the easy confidence of someone who had found his place, handing tools to the older men and following instructions communicated through gestures and the few Apache words he had learned. "He has good hands," said a voice beside her. Morning Thunder had approached silently, a skill Sarah still found unnerving despite their growing familiarity. "Learns quickly." "He always has," Sarah acknowledged with maternal pride. "His father was the same way, could build or fix almost anything. Your husband was builder, a carpenter, yes, and a good one." Sarah's voice softened with memory. "He was making us a real home in Pennsylvania when word came from my brother about homesteading opportunities out west. Robert couldn't resist the chance to have land of our own." Morning Thunder nodded, understanding the pull of such a dream. "Land is life. Yes, though I sometimes wonder if we should have stayed where we were." Sarah glanced at him. "Not that I'm ungrateful for being here. Without you, without your people's generosity." "Path is path," Morning Thunder said simply. "Cannot see all turns before walking." Their conversations had become more frequent as the days passed, initially centered on teaching matters, but gradually expanding to include personal histories and cultural exchanges. Sarah had learned about Apache customs and beliefs, while Morning Thunder showed increasing curiosity about the world she had come from. Now he gestured toward the central fire pit, where several women were preparing the midday meal. "Hey, come. Council wants report on teaching." Chief Tall Elk sat with Grey Wolf and two other elders, their faces weathered maps of experience beneath grey hair. They greeted Sarah with dignified nods as she approached, a marked improvement from the guarded suspicion of her early days in the camp. "The teacher comes," Chief Tall Elk said in his limited English. "Sit, speak of learning." Sarah settled on a mat across from them, accepting a cup of pine needle tea from a young woman. Morning Thunder positioned himself slightly behind her, ready to translate when needed. "The children are learning quickly," Sarah began. "They recognize all letters now and can read simple stories. Several can write their names and basic words in English." Morning Thunder translated, and the elders exchanged approving glances. "Walking Bear says you write our stories," Grey Wolf said through Morning Thunder. "This is true," Sarah nodded. "With his permission, yes. I thought the children would be more engaged learning to read words that tell familiar tales." When this was translated, Chief Tall Elk leaned forward. "These writings, who will see them?" Sarah sensed the concern behind the question. "Only those you approve." "I would never share your sacred stories without permission." The chief seemed satisfied with this answer. "Good. White men often take what is not theirs to take. Land, gold, even stories." "I understand," Sarah said. "In my teaching back east, I saw how history books often misrepresented native peoples. I don't want to contribute to that." As Morning Thunder translated her words, Sarah noticed something unusual. Swift Knife approaching with a white man she didn't recognize. The stranger wore an army scout's buckskins and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to moving between worlds. The council members turned at the newcomers, approach, conversation halting abruptly. "Chief Tall Elk," Swift Knife said in Apache, deliberately not acknowledging Sarah's presence. "This man brings news from Fort Collins." The visitor removed his hat, revealing close-cropped graying hair and sharp blue eyes that took in everything, including Sarah, with evident surprise. "Ma'am," he said with a slight nod before turning to the chief, "I'm Daniel Harper, scout for the 7th Cavalry at Fort Collins. I've been sent to warn nearby settlements and tribes about increased military activity in the region." Morning Thunder translated his words into Apache, his expression carefully neutral, though Sarah sensed his tension. "What kind of activity?" Chief Tall Elk asked. "There's been trouble with some Cheyenne bands to the north," Harper explained. "A supply wagon was attacked, 3 soldiers killed. The colonels sent out patrols with orders to pacify any hostile natives." His emphasis on pacify made clear his opinion of that euphemism. "We have peace agreement," Chief Tall Elk said. "No trouble with white soldiers." Harper nodded. "I know that, Chief. That's why I came to warn you. Some of these patrols don't much care which tribe they're dealing with. Best to avoid any contact if you can." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. She'd heard stories of army pacification efforts, of villages burned and people killed without distinction between hostile and peaceful. "Thank you for warning," Chief Tall Elk said with dignity. "We stay in winter camp. No hunting parties for now." Harper hesitated, his gaze moving between the chief and Sarah. "If I might ask, ma'am, what's your situation here? We hadn't heard of any white settlers with the Apache." Before Sarah could respond, Swift Knife spoke rapidly in Apache. Though she couldn't understand the words, his hostile tone was unmistakable. Morning Thunder provided a measured translation. Swift Knife says you should take the white woman and her children with you when you go. Says they are burden on tribe during hard winter. Sarah's heart sank, though she wasn't entirely surprised by Swift Knife's suggestion. Despite her contributions as a teacher, he had remained openly skeptical of her presence. Chief Tall Elk silenced Swift Knife with a raised hand. "The woman is our guest," he told Harper. "She teaches our children English writing. She stays until spring makes travel safe." Harper raised his eyebrows but nodded. "As you say, Chief, I meant no offense." He turned to Sarah. "Ma'am, if you don't mind my asking, how did you come to be here?" Sarah explained briefly about Robert's death, their ill-fated journey, and Morning Thunder's rescue of her family. Harper listened with a thoughtful expression. "Your brother, would that be William Wilkins, homesteading near Elk Creek?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Yes." "Do you know him?" "Passed his place about a week ago. Good man. He's been searching for you since the first snow, had about given up hope." Harper glanced at the sky. "He'd be mighty relieved to know you're alive." "Could you get word to him?" Sarah asked eagerly. "I could," Harper confirmed. "I'll be heading back that way after I've warned the Ute camp to the west." He turned to Chief Tall Elk. "With your permission, Chief, I could return in a few weeks, when the passes are clearer, to escort Mrs. Wilkins and her children to her brother's homestead." The chief considered this, then nodded slowly. "If weather permits, yes." After Harper departed, accompanied by Swift Knife to the camp's edge, an uneasy silence fell over the gathering. Sarah looked to Morning Thunder, whose expression had grown distant. "You will leave soon," he said, not quite a question. "When the weather allows," Sarah acknowledged, as was always the plan. Something unspoken hung in the air between them, a complexity of feeling neither was prepared to name. That evening, the camp buzzed with discussions about Harper's warning. Sarah found her children unusually quiet as they ate their evening meal inside their lodge. "Will we have to leave soon, Ma?" Emma asked, voicing the concern they all seemed to share. "Not until it's safe to travel," Sarah assured her. "But yes, eventually we'll go to Uncle William's homestead." "I don't want to go," declared John, one of the twins. "I like it here. Swift Water is teaching me to make a bow. And I'm learning to do beadwork," Emma added. "Morning Star says I have good eyes for it." Sarah regarded her children with mixed emotions. She hadn't anticipated how quickly they would adapt to life among the Apache, forming friendships and embracing new skills. The prospect of leaving clearly troubled them more than she had expected. "We don't belong here," Thomas said quietly, surprising Sarah with his pragmatism. "And we're guests, and guests eventually go home. But where is home now, Thomas?" Sarah asked gently. "Our home in Pennsylvania is gone. We've never even seen Uncle William's homestead." The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Later, after the children were asleep, Sarah stepped outside to clear her head. The night was crisp and still, stars glittering like shards of ice against the black sky. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Cannot sleep." Morning Thunder's voice came from the shadows. Sarah wasn't startled this time. She had almost expected him to appear. "Too much to think about." He moved to stand beside her, his tall figure solid and somehow reassuring in the darkness. "Harper's news troubles you?" "Yes." "The thought of soldiers not distinguishing between hostile and friendly tribes, it's frightening. Has happened before. Will happen again." Morning Thunder's voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. "White soldiers see one Indian, think all same." "It's wrong," Sarah said with sudden vehemence, "just as it would be wrong to say all white people are the same." Morning Thunder was silent for a moment. "Your children learn our ways quickly." "Become part of camp. "I've noticed," Sarah said softly. "They'll miss it here, miss their friends." "And you? Will you miss Apache camp?" The directness of his question caught her off guard. Sarah looked up at him, at the strong profile outlined against the starry sky, and felt a complicated warmth that had nothing to do with the shawl around her shoulders. "Yes," she admitted. "And I will." Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes that spoke volumes without words. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the quiet sounds of the sleeping camp. Neither mentioned the growing connection between them, a friendship that defied the boundaries of their different worlds, a mutual respect that had deepened day by day. To name it would be to acknowledge its inevitability and its impossibility in equal measure. Yet in that moment of shared silence beneath the winter stars, both knew that when spring came and paths diverged, something precious would be lost. A bridge carefully built between two worlds that rarely met in peace. A week after Harper's visit, the first signs of approaching spring teased the mountains. Snow still blanketed the camp, but midday brought hours of brilliant sunshine that turned the surface into a glittering crust. Icicles dripped from the lodge coverings, and the distant sound of running water whispered promises of thaw. On this particular morning, Sarah found herself not in the council lodge teaching, but at the edge of the camp with Singing Bird and several other women. After a month of sharing the Apache winter camp, she had been invited to learn one of the tribe's essential skills, the preparation of deer hide. "Pull tight," Singing Bird instructed, demonstrating how to stretch the hide between wooden pegs. "Too loose, hide dry wrong." Sarah mimicked the movements, her fingers clumsy compared to the Apache women's practiced precision. Emma worked beside her, having eagerly joined the lesson. The girl had blossomed during their time with the tribe, losing her initial shyness and absorbing new skills with enthusiasm. "Like this, Ma," Emma said, correctly tensioning her corner of the hide. Morning Star, her Apache friend, nodded approval. "Your daughter learns quickly," Singing Bird observed. "Good hands, good eyes." "She's always been a quick study," Sarah replied, feeling a complex pride in Emma's adaptation. Her children were thriving here in ways she hadn't anticipated when morning thunder first carried them through the blizzard. Thomas spent most days now with the hunters and scouts, learning tracking and survival skills. The twins had become fixtures in the children's games, their English and Apache vocabularies blending into a hybrid language of play. Even baby Ruth had her circle of admirers, the older women who took turns holding her, singing Apache lullabies that seemed to soothe her more effectively than Sarah's own. "Hide is life," Singing Bird continued her instruction. "Gives shelter, clothing, containers." She handed Sarah a bone scraper. "Now remove flesh, firm but gentle." As Sarah worked, she reflected on her changing perspective. A month ago, she might have found this task primitive or distasteful. Now she appreciated the practical wisdom in using every part of the animal, the skill required to transform raw hide into useful material. Her hands were becoming calloused in new places, her body stronger despite the winter confinement. A commotion at the camp's perimeter interrupted their work. Sarah looked up to see Thomas running toward them, his expression urgent. "Ma," he called. "Morning thunder says to come quickly. Riders approaching from the south." Sarah and Emma exchanged alarmed glances. Since Harper's warning about military patrols, the tribe had maintained extra vigilance. Morning Thunder and other scouts took turns watching the approaches to their hidden valley. "Go," Singing Bird said, taking the scraper from Sarah's hands. "We finish." Sarah hurried with Thomas toward the center of camp, where people were gathering. Chief Tall Elk stood with the council members, Morning Thunder at his side, speaking rapidly in Apache. When he saw Sarah, he broke off and came to meet her. "3 riders," he said without preamble. "Army uniforms, coming up Valley Trail." Sarah felt her heart quicken. "Did they see you?" Morning Thunder shook his head. "I stay hidden." They follow old tracks, move slow, snow still deep on trail. Chief Tall Elk approached, his expression grave. "We must decide quickly, fight or hide." "Or talk," Sarah suggested. "Perhaps they're just passing through. If they're not actively hostile..." Swift Knife spat on the ground. "All white soldiers hostile. They see our camp, they attack." "Not necessarily," Sarah countered. "If it's just 3 men, they won't risk an engagement with superior numbers. They might be scouts, like Harper. Or they bring many more behind them," Swift Knife argued. Morning Thunder held up a hand. "Sarah speaks sense. Small group may not seek fight." He turned to the chief. "I say we watch longer before deciding." Chief Tall Elk considered, then nodded. "Morning Thunder, take 2 warriors. Observe these soldiers. If they continue toward camp, return quickly. We prepare for defense or departure." As Morning Thunder selected his companions, Sarah touched his arm. "Be careful." Something passed between them, concern that transcended cultural boundaries, a connection neither had intended, but both now silently acknowledged. "Always careful," he replied with the ghost of a smile. "Watch over little ones." After Morning Thunder and his fellow scouts departed, an uneasy tension settled over the camp. Women gathered children close, men checked weapons, and elders spoke in hushed tones. Sarah found her own children and brought them to their lodge, trying to project a calm she didn't feel. "Are the soldiers coming to hurt us?" James asked, his 6-year-old face pinched with worry. "No, sweetheart," Sarah assured him, though uncertainty gnawed at her. "They probably don't even know we're here." "But if they find us," Thomas said quietly, "what happens then?" Sarah met her eldest son's gaze, knowing he deserved honesty. "I don't know, Thomas, but Chief Tall Elk and Morning Thunder will make the right decision to keep everyone safe." Time stretched painfully as they waited. Sarah occupied the children with quiet games and stories, but her mind remained fixed on the dangers approaching. If these were indeed soldiers from the patrols Harper had warned about, they might not distinguish between hostile and peaceful tribes. And how would they react to finding a white woman and her children living among the Apache? Nearly 2 hours passed before a soft call outside announced Morning Thunder's return. Sarah stepped out to find him, conferring urgently with Chief Tall Elk and the council. 3 soldiers, as seen, Morning Thunder reported, including Sarah in his explanation. Lieutenant and 2 privates. They follow old tracks from hunting party, seem confused. Now make camp 1 mile south, near Bendin Creek. Will they find us? Grey Wolf asked. If they continue following tracks, yes, Morning Thunder confirmed. Snow melts, but signs remain. Swift Knife gripped his knife handle. "We should kill them before they bring others." Sarah gasped, but Chief Tall Elk raised a hand. "No, we have peace agreement. Killing soldiers brings more soldiers." "Then we must leave," another council member suggested. "Break camp, move deeper into mountains. Too dangerous for elders, for children," Walking Bear objected. "Night comes soon." Moving through snow in darkness risks lives. A heavy silence fell as they considered their limited options. Sarah felt the weight of her family's presence adding to the tribe's dilemma. If not for them, perhaps the Apache would have already retreated further into the wilderness. "I could speak to them," she said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. "If I approach them openly, explain my situation, that you rescued my family, it might prevent misunderstanding." Swift Knife scoffed. And what stops them from taking you, then returning with more soldiers to attack us? I wouldn't tell them exactly where the camp is, Sarah countered. I could say you moved on and left me with supplies, that I was waiting for better weather to travel. Morning Thunder studied her face, recognizing the courage behind her offer. Dangerous gamble. Soldiers might not believe. It's less dangerous than conflict, Sarah insisted. These men might have families of their own. If they see a woman with young children, they're less likely to be hostile. Chief Tall Elk considered her proposal with grave attention. Your heart is brave, Sarah Wilkins. But what of your children if soldiers prove untrustworthy? The question struck Sarah like a physical blow. She hadn't considered the possibility of being separated from her children if her plan went wrong. Morning Thunder stepped forward. I have different plan. Sarah and I go together. I dress as scout, like Harper, say I work for army, found white family in snow, taking them to settlement when weather clears. The council members exchanged glances, evaluating this alternative. Soldiers see Apache scout with white woman, maybe believe, Grey Wolf acknowledged, but great risk for Morning Thunder. I take risk, Morning Thunder said simply. Better than risking whole tribe. Sarah looked at him with gratitude and concern. They could arrest you, or worse. Could, he agreed, but soldiers respect scouts, even Indian scouts, need us too much to shoot quickly. After further deliberation, Chief Tall Elk made his decision. Morning Thunder and Sarah will speak to soldiers at first light, tell story of rescue, say tribe moved on. If soldiers believe, good. If not, he left the alternative unspoken. As the council dispersed to prepare for various contingencies, Sarah returned to her lodge to find Thomas waiting anxiously. I'm going with you, he declared before she could speak. To see the soldiers. Absolutely not, Sarah replied firmly. It's too dangerous. I'm not a child, Ma. I'm nearly 11. Pa would want me to protect you. Sarah softened, touching her son's cheek. Your father would want you to protect your brothers and sisters. That's your job if, she hesitated, if something happens to me. Thomas's eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. Nothing's going to happen to you. Morning Thunder won't let it. Sarah wished she could share his certainty. Get some sleep, Thomas. Whatever happens, tomorrow will be a difficult day. Sleep proved elusive, however. As the camp settled into an uneasy quiet, Sarah sat by the small fire in her lodge, mentally rehearsing what she would say to the soldiers. Her children slept around her, innocent faces peaceful in slumber, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond their safe circle. A soft sound at the entrance announced Morning Thunder's arrival. He entered silently, settling across the fire from her. In the flickering light, his face seemed carved from shadow, eyes reflecting the dancing flames. Children sleep well, he observed. Good. Tomorrow comes early. Thank you, Sarah said softly, for risking yourself this way. You've already done so much for us. Morning Thunder shrugged slightly. Doing what is right. Nothing more. It's considerably more, Sarah insisted. Most men, white or Apache, wouldn't have rescued us in the first place, let alone continued to protect us at such cost. He was quiet for a moment, studying the fire. When I found you in snow, he said finally, I saw a woman with same heart as Apache mother, fighting for children against all hope. His eyes lifted to meet hers. Such courage deserves honor. The simple statement touched Sarah deeply. And your people have a beautiful understanding of honor. I've learned so much here. She hesitated, then added, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that my children and I will carry these lessons always. Morning Thunder nodded. a certain sadness touching his features. "If tomorrow goes well, Harper returns soon. You go to brother's home." "Yes," Sarah acknowledged, feeling a tightness in her chest at the thought of leaving. "That was always the plan. Plans change," Morning Thunder said quietly, "like river changes course when meeting stone." The metaphor hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Sarah was acutely aware of how her own course had been altered, not just her physical journey, but her understanding of the world and her place in it. "Morning Thunder," she began hesitantly. A sudden commotion outside interrupted her words. Shouts in Apache, running feet, the high-pitched whinny of a horse in distress. Morning Thunder was on his feet instantly, knife in hand. "Stay here, protect children." He disappeared through the lodge entrance before Sarah could respond. She quickly checked that her children remained asleep, then moved to the entrance, peering out cautiously. The camp was in motion, warriors gathering with weapons, women hurrying children into lodges. At the perimeter, several men were dragging someone toward the council lodge. A soldier, Sarah realized with horror, unconscious or dead, his blue uniform stark against the snow. The carefully constructed plan for tomorrow's meeting was unraveling before it could begin. Whatever had happened on the scouting patrol that night had just brought the threat directly into their midst, and with it, the potential for disaster. Sarah clutched the lodge flap, watching as Morning Thunder joined the group around the captured soldier. The firelight caught his profile, resolute, commanding, yet troubled. Decisions made in the next few hours would determine all their fates. Outside, the wind picked up, sending swirls of snow dancing between the lodges like restless spirits. The brief, fragile piece of their shared winter sanctuary stood on the precipice of destruction, and Sarah could only watch, heart pounding, as the two worlds she had come to inhabit collided with potentially devastating force. Sarah stood frozen at the entrance of her lodge, watching as warriors carried the soldier toward the council fire. Without conscious thought, she pulled her shawl tighter and stepped into the cold night. Thomas appeared at her side, awakened by the commotion. "Stay with your brothers and sisters," she instructed, her voice tense. "Don't leave the lodge." "But Ma, no arguments." "Thomas, if they need me, someone will come for you." Reluctantly, her son retreated inside. Sarah moved quickly through the camp, following the procession to the council lodge, where a crowd had already gathered. Men spoke in rapid Apache, gestures sharp with urgency. Women watched from the periphery, faces tight with concern. Morning Thunder spotted her approach and moved to intercept. "You should not be here," he said quietly. "Is he alive?" Sarah asked, ignoring his admonition. Morning Thunder nodded. "Alive, unconscious, young soldier separated from others, horse slipped on ice near river, found by our night scouts." Sarah processed this information rapidly. "Hey, where are the other two soldiers?" "Still at camp, 1 mile south. Not yet, no companion is missing." Chief Tall Elk summoned them with a gesture. Inside the council lodge, the soldier lay on furs near the central fire. He was indeed young, barely more than a boy, Sarah thought, with a freckled face and sandy hair. A purpling bruise spread across his temple where he must have struck something in his fall. His breathing was shallow but steady. "The white woman comes," Swift Knife said in Apache, which Morning Thunder translated, "Now she can see what her presence has brought to our camp." Sarah ignored the accusation, kneeling beside the injured soldier. She checked his pulse, then gently examined the head wound. "He needs his head elevated and the wound cleaned," she said, slipping automatically into the role of caretaker. And I don't think his skull is fractured, but he may have a concussion. Walking Bear, already preparing herbs and poultices, nodded his understanding. Despite his role as medicine man, he respected Sarah's knowledge of treating injuries, gained from her years of tending to school children and her own family. What do we do with this soldier? Grey Wolf asked, the question foremost in everyone's mind. Swift Knife's answer was immediate. Kill him. Before others come looking. Sarah's head snapped up. You can't be serious. One dead soldier means nothing to White Army, Swift Knife continued, as if she hadn't spoken. They lose men to weather, accidents all the time. It means everything, Sarah countered fiercely. If he disappears, they'll blame the nearest tribe, you. They'll come with more men, looking for revenge. Morning Thunder translated her words, adding his own. Sarah speaks truth. Dead soldier brings more soldiers. And a living one who has seen our camp brings even more, Swift Knife retorted. Chief Tall Elk raised his hand for silence. What does the white woman suggest? He asked, his weathered face impassive. Sarah took a breath, forcing herself to think beyond her instinctive horror at Swift Knife's proposal. When he wakes, I can speak to him. Explain that I'm a widow traveling west with my children. I can say that I was found by an Apache scout working for the army, Morning Thunder, who was bringing us to safety when we encountered this young man injured in the snow. He will not believe, Swift Knife scoffed. He might, Sarah insisted. Especially if he wakes to see a white woman caring for him rather than Apache warriors threatening him. Morning Thunder considered her suggestion. It could work. Young soldier, inexperienced, confused from injury. And his companions? Chief Tall Elk asked. They will search when he does not return. We should return him before they begin searching, Sarah proposed. Morning Thunder and I could bring him partway back to their camp at first light, leave him where his friends will find him quickly. The council members exchanged glances, weighing the risks. Even Swift Knife seemed to be considering the practical merits of her plan, his hostility tempered by reluctant recognition of its logic. What if he remembers seeing camp? Grey Wolf asked. What if he tells others? His injury will cloud memory, Walking Bear offered. Head wounds often take memories with them. And if not, Morning Thunder added, one confused soldier's story may not be believed. Many white men claim to see things after injury that others doubt. Chief Tall Elk pondered silently, the firelight deepening the lines of his face. Finally, he spoke. We will try the woman's way. Walking Bear will tend his wound tonight. At first light, Morning Thunder and Sarah will take him south, leave him for his companions to find. His eyes, dark and penetrating, fixed on Sarah. But be warned, if this fails, if more soldiers come, we must leave this place quickly, all of us. Sarah nodded her understanding. The implications were clear. If her plan failed, the entire tribe would be forced to flee deeper into the mountains, a dangerous journey for the elders and the very young, with food already scarce. The young soldier groaned, eyelids fluttering. Everyone tensed. Walking Bear moved swiftly, administering a bitter-smelling herbal mixture that sent him back into unconsciousness. He sleeps again, the medicine man explained. I will stay asleep until morning. Better for healing, better for us. As the council dispersed, Morning Thunder accompanied Sarah back to her lodge. The camp had settled somewhat, though Sarah noted more warriors were positioned at the perimeter than usual, keeping watch. Your plan is good, Morning Thunder said quietly, but dangerous. Less dangerous than the alternatives, Sarah replied. They stopped outside her lodge. In the moonlight, his face was a study in shadows, but his eyes reflected starlight when they met hers. You risk much for my people. They're not just your people anymore, Sarah said softly. Not to me. Not after all this time. Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a recognition. You have become ND in your heart. ND, the people, what we call ourselves. Apache is name others gave us. Sarah absorbed this, another piece of understanding granted to her. I've come to care deeply about what happens to the ND, she admitted, to all of you. The unspoken hung between them, that her care extended particularly to him, that something had grown between them that neither had intended nor could easily name. Try to sleep, Morning Thunder said finally. Morning comes quickly. Inside the lodge, Sarah found all 5 children awake and anxious. Even baby Ruth seemed to sense the tension, fussing in Emma's arms. What's happening, Ma? Thomas asked immediately. I heard them talking about a soldier. Sarah sat down, gathering her thoughts. She had never believed in sheltering her children from difficult truths, a philosophy that had served them well during the hardships following Robert's death. A young soldier was injured near the camp, she explained. The Apache scouts found him and brought him here. He's unconscious, but not seriously hurt. Are the soldiers going to attack us? James asked, his small face pinched with worry. No, sweetheart. In the morning, Morning Thunder and I are going to take him back toward his companions before they even realize he's missing. Emma frowned. Why can't he just stay here until he's better? Walking Bear could help him? Because soldiers wouldn't understand, Thomas answered before Sarah could. They'd think the Apache had hurt him or taken him prisoner. Sarah nodded, unsurprised by her eldest son's perception. That's right, Thomas. Sometimes people are quick to assume the worst when they don't understand each other's ways. But we understand now, Emma said with the simple certainty of childhood. We could explain to them. Sarah smiled sadly, touched by her daughter's faith in the power of explanation, if only adult conflicts could be so easily resolved. It's more complicated than that, Em, but yes, understanding helps. That's why teaching and learning from each other is so important. Eventually, the children drifted back to sleep, though Thomas remained awake longest, his eyes troubled as he watched Sarah prepare a small pack for the morning journey. You'll be careful, won't you, Ma? He asked as she tucked the blanket around him. Of course I will. Morning Thunder will be with me. Thomas nodded, seemingly reassured by this. He wouldn't let anything happen to you. Sarah brushed his hair back from his forehead, struck by her son's complete trust in the Apache scout. Try to sleep now. I'll need you to watch over the little ones while I'm gone. Dawn arrived with leaden skies that promised more snow by afternoon. Sarah dressed warmly, checking on her still sleeping children before stepping outside, where Morning Thunder waited with 2 horses. Nearby, several warriors carried the unconscious soldier, now wrapped in blankets against the cold. Walking Bear gave him medicine, Morning Thunder explained. He sleeps deeply, but breathes well. We'll wake in few hours. Chief Tall Elk approached, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. Remember, leave no tracks leading back to camp. Circle south, then east. Make soldiers' companions think he wandered north before falling. Sarah nodded her understanding. The deception was necessary to protect the tribe, though it sat uneasily with her conscience. With the warriors' help, they secured the soldier across one of the horses. Morning Thunder mounted the other, then extended his hand to Sarah. She settled behind him, arms circling his waist for balance as they set off through the pre-dawn darkness. They rode in silence, following a route that Morning Thunder selected carefully to mislead any trackers. The soldier remained unconscious, though occasional groans suggested he might be beginning to wake. After nearly an hour's ride, they reached a clearing where tracks in the snow indicated the soldiers' camp had been recently struck. They've moved, Sarah said with alarm. They must be searching for him already. Morning Thunder dismounted, examining the tracks with expert eyes. 3, maybe 4 hours ago. Moving east, not north, toward our camp. He frowned. Strange. Should be searching in all directions. Unless they were already planning to move on, Sarah suggested. Perhaps they have orders, a schedule to keep. Maybe. Morning Thunder still looked troubled. We follow, find where they are now. Must see soldier safely returned. They continued east, moving more cautiously now. The terrain became more difficult, forcing them to dismount and lead the horses through rocky passages where the snow had drifted deep. The soldier began stirring more frequently, mumbling incoherently. "He wakes soon," Morning Thunder observed. "We must hurry." After another mile, they heard voices ahead. Morning Thunder immediately led them into a stand of pines for cover. Through the branches, they could see a small camp beside a half-frozen stream. 3 horses, a small fire, and 2 soldiers in conversation. "There," Sarah whispered. "We can leave him where they'll find him quickly." Morning Thunder studied the scene, then nodded. "I go first. Make sure safe." "You stay with horses." Before Sarah could protest, he had melted into the forest with silent efficiency. She waited anxiously, watching the 2 soldiers by the fire. They appeared relaxed, showing no signs of actively searching for their missing companion. Several tense minutes passed before Morning Thunder reappeared beside her, moving so quietly she nearly gasped in surprise. "No others nearby," he reported. "Just these 2. They sit, eat, talk about women in fort. Not searching, not worried." Sarah frowned. "That makes no sense. Why aren't they looking for their companion?" "Not no, but good for us. We leave soldier now, before he wakes fully." Together, they maneuvered the young man off the horse. He was beginning to stir more persistently, eyelids fluttering. They carried him to a spot within earshot of the camp, but concealed enough that they could retreat unseen. "Go now," Morning Thunder urged. "He wakes. We'll call out soon." Sarah hesitated, unwilling to leave the injured man without ensuring he would be found. "What if they don't hear him?" "They hear," Morning Thunder assured her, "but we cannot be seen." Too dangerous. As if to emphasize his point, the young soldier's eyes opened fully, confusion evident in his gaze as it settled on Sarah's face. "Mom," he mumbled. "Where? What happened?" "You fell from your horse," Sarah said quickly. "Hit your head. You're near your camp now. Your companions are just beyond those trees. Can you call out to them?" The soldier blinked slowly, still disoriented. Then his eyes shifted to Morning Thunder, and fear flashed across his features. "Indian!" he gasped, hand groping for a weapon that wasn't there. "Friend," Sarah corrected firmly. "He helped carry you here. We found you injured in the snow." The young man still looked suspicious, but his fear seemed to ebb slightly. "Lieutenant will want to thank you, ma'am. We've been ordered to escort any civilians back to the fort." "Too dangerous out here with hostiles about." Sarah and Morning Thunder exchanged a quick glance. "We're fine," she said. "I'm traveling with protection." She gestured vaguely toward Morning Thunder. The soldier's eyebrows rose. "With an Indian scout, Mom, the lieutenant would still want—" Morning Thunder interrupted in clear, deliberate English that surprised even Sarah with its fluency. "Army knows me. Scout for Major Williams at Fort Collins, taking white family to settlement when weather clears." His authoritative tone seemed to reassure the young soldier, who nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I'll tell the lieutenant." He struggled to sit up. "Could you help me to our camp?" Still feeling mighty dizzy, Sarah looked to Morning Thunder, who gave a barely perceptible nod. They couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. "And do you, of course," she said, helping the soldier to his feet. "Lean on me." As they approached the soldiers' camp, the two men by the fire leaped up in surprise, hands moving to their weapons. "Jenkins!" one called out. "Where the hell have you been?" His eyes darted between Sarah and Morning Thunder with obvious confusion. "Found him injured in the snow," Morning Thunder explained before Sarah could speak. "Army Scout Morning Thunder." From Fort Collins. The older of the two soldiers, a corporal by his insignia, relaxed slightly, though wariness remained in his stance. "Appreciate you bringing him back, Scout. Lieutenant Crawford will want to speak with you. He's scouting ahead, but should return shortly." Sarah felt Morning Thunder tense beside her. "Cannot wait," he said. "Must return to my camp before storm comes." He gestured toward the heavy clouds gathering overhead. The corporal's eyes narrowed. "Your camp? Where exactly is that, Scout?" "North," Morning Thunder replied vaguely. "Protected valley. Temporary camp only." "And you, ma'am?" The corporal turned to Sarah. "What's your situation here?" "I'm a widow traveling west with my children," she explained, adhering to their prepared story. "We were stranded when our wagon broke. Scout Morning Thunder found us and has been helping us survive until travel is safer." The corporal studied her intently. "Children, you say? Where are they now?" "Safe in camp," Morning Thunder answered, before Sarah could detail their fabrication further. "Woman and I checking trails, found your man by accident." The younger soldier, a private, was helping Jenkins sit by the fire. "Corporal Davis," he called. "Jenkins says he remembers falling from his horse near some rocks. Nothing after that until these folks found him." Sarah felt a rush of relief. The head injury had indeed affected the young soldier's memory, just as Walking Bear had predicted. Corporal Davis seemed to make a decision. "Well, we're obliged for your help, but I still think the lieutenant would want to speak with you both. We've got orders to escort any civilians back to the fort. What with the Cheyenne raids lately?" "Not Cheyenne in these parts," Morning Thunder said, a hint of challenge in his tone. "Apache, peaceful Apache with agreement papers from government?" "Maybe so," Davis conceded, "but orders are orders. The lieutenant will be back within the hour. I'd take it kindly if you'd wait." Sarah could feel the situation balancing on a knife's edge. Every minute they remained increased the risk of discovery, yet refusing too forcefully would only heighten the corporal's suspicions. "Perhaps we could," she began, but was interrupted by a shout from farther down the stream. "Corporal, we've found something!" All eyes turned toward a fourth soldier who came running into camp, breathing hard. He pulled up short at the sight of Sarah and Morning Thunder. "Sir," he panted, addressing Davis, "we found tracks leading north. Lots of them. Lieutenant thinks there's an Indian camp nearby." Sarah's heart sank. The lieutenant and remaining soldiers must have been scouting the area while they were delivering Jenkins back to camp. Corporal Davis's demeanor changed instantly, his hand moving to his sidearm. "That right. And here we have an army scout who says he's camped north." His eyes hardened as they fixed on Morning Thunder, "with a white woman and children, supposedly." Morning Thunder's expression remained impassive, though Sarah could feel the tension radiating from him. They were trapped in a rapidly deteriorating situation with no easy escape. "There's been a misunderstanding," Sarah tried, but Davis cut her off. "Ma'am, step away from the Indian." "Now." Sarah did not move. "Corporal, I assure you." "Now, ma'am, that's an order." The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Sarah knew their next actions could mean life or death, not just for them, but for the entire Apache camp. Time seemed to slow as Sarah stood frozen beside Morning Thunder, the corporal's command hanging in the air between them. Every instinct told her to protect this man who had saved her family, but compliance might be their only chance to escape without bloodshed. She could feel Morning Thunder's readiness to act, a subtle tension in his muscles, a shift in his breathing. "I will not step away," Sarah said firmly, surprising herself with her steadiness. "This man saved my life and the lives of my 5 children. He is an honorable scout who deserves your respect, not your suspicion." Corporal Davis's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I don't know what they've told you or what kind of influence they've had on you, but they," Sarah interrupted, righteous indignation rising. "There is only this man, Morning Thunder, who found my family dying in the snow when our wagon broke an axle. My husband had been dead for weeks. We were lost, freezing, starving. He carried me through waist-deep snow while guiding my children to safety." The passion in her voice gave the corporal pause. The young soldier, Jenkins, still dizzy from his head wound, looked confused. "But he said there was a camp," Davis insisted, though with less certainty. "Yes, a temporary shelter he made for us," Sarah improvised, "a place where my children could recover from frostbite and exposure." "Would you rather he had left us to die?" Morning Thunder remained silent, allowing Sarah's words to work their effect. She felt a surge of gratitude for his trust in her ability to navigate this dangerous situation. The standoff might have resolved there if not for the sound of approaching horses. 3 riders appeared through the trees, led by a stern-faced officer whose bearing marked him as the lieutenant, even before the corporal stiffened to attention. "Sir, Lieutenant Crawford, sir," Davis called. "We've got a situation here." The lieutenant dismounted smoothly, his calculating gaze taking in the scene. Sarah standing protectively near Morning Thunder, the corporal's hand still hovering near his sidearm, Jenkins sitting dazed by the fire. "Report, Corporal," he said crisply. "Sir, we found Jenkins, or rather these 2 claim they found him injured. The Indian says he's an army scout, says he's got a camp north of here with this woman and her children, but Michael's just reported tracks suggesting a larger encampment in that direction." Lieutenant Crawford turned his full attention to Sarah and Morning Thunder. Unlike the corporal, his demeanor was controlled, almost analytical. He was older than the others, perhaps 40, with a weathered face that suggested years on the frontier. "Ma'am," he addressed Sarah directly, "I'm Lieutenant James Crawford, 7th Cavalry, and you are?" "Sarah Wilkins, Lieutenant, widow of Robert Wilkins, formerly of Pennsylvania." "And what exactly is your situation here, Mrs. Wilkins?" Sarah took a breath, knowing her next words might determine all their fates. "My husband died of pneumonia while we were traveling to my brother's homestead near Elk Creek. Our wagon broke in the snowstorm 3 weeks ago. This man," she gestured to Morning Thunder, "found us near death and has been caring for my children and me until travel becomes safer." Crawford studied Morning Thunder thoughtfully. "You claim to be an army scout?" Morning Thunder met his gaze without wavering. "Scout for Major Williams, Fort Collins, papers in camp." "Convenient," Crawford remarked dryly. "And this camp of yours, just how many people are in it?" Before Morning Thunder could answer, Sarah interjected, "Just us, Lieutenant, my 5 children and Morning Thunder. It's more of a shelter than a camp, really. We've been hunting and gathering supplies, preparing for the journey to my brother's place when the pass is clear." Crawford's eyes narrowed slightly. 5 children, you say, traveling in this weather? That seems imprudent, Mrs. Wilkins. "It wasn't by choice," Sarah replied, her voice catching with genuine emotion. "We were desperate after Robert died. My brother's homestead was our only hope for a future." Something in her sincerity seemed to register with Crawford. He nodded slightly, then turned back to the corporal. "And Jenkins, what's his condition?" "Concussion, sir, from a fall. Claims he doesn't remember much." Crawford frowned. Those tracks we found, they were numerous. Too many for just one Indian and a family. He fixed Morning Thunder with a penetrating stare. I think you're hiding something, Scout. There's an Apache camp nearby, isn't there? Morning Thunder's expression remained impassive, but Sarah felt him tense beside her, the moment balanced on a knife's edge. There was a band, Sarah said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. They moved on 2 days ago. Heading west, they said. They left us supplies before they went. Morning Thunder gave her a quick, surprised glance before masking his reaction. She continued, the lie flowing more smoothly than she would have believed possible. They found us after Morning Thunder did. Their chief, an elderly man, allowed us to stay with them briefly while the children recovered. They were peaceful, Lieutenant. They even had government papers, treaties. Crawford's expression showed skepticism. Apache, traveling in winter. Food was scarce in their usual grounds, Sarah elaborated, drawing on details she'd learned during her time in the camp. They were moving toward better hunting. The lieutenant studied her face, searching for deception. Sarah met his gaze steadily, praying that her eyes wouldn't betray the desperate lie. After a long moment, Crawford turned to one of his men. Sergeant Briggs, take 2 men and follow those tracks north. If you find a camp, observe only, do not engage. Report back immediately. Sarah's heart sank. If they found the camp, all would be lost. Waste of time, sir, Morning Thunder said unexpectedly. Tracks 2 days old. Apache move fast. Be gone. Crawford raised an eyebrow. Perhaps. But I have my orders. Locate and identify all Indian movements in this region. He turned back to Sarah. As for you, Mrs. Wilkins, I'm afraid I must insist you and your children come with us to Fort Collins. The frontier is no place for a widow and young ones, especially with Cheyenne raiding parties active. But my brother, we can send word to him from the fort. Once the situation stabilizes, an escort can be arranged. Sarah glanced at Morning Thunder, trying to communicate silently. If they were taken to the fort, the Apache camp might remain undiscovered, but what would happen to Morning Thunder? As if reading her concern, Crawford addressed it directly. Your scout can accompany us, of course. If his credentials are genuine, Major Williams will confirm it. Morning Thunder stood very still, weighing options that all seemed dangerous. Children need supplies from camp, he said finally. Belongings, not leave without. Crawford considered this. Very well, Corporal Davis and I will accompany you to collect the children and your belongings. The rest of the patrol will continue reconnaissance. His tone made clear this was not a suggestion. Lieutenant, Sarah began, desperate to prevent the officer from discovering the Apache camp. The children are exhausted, and the smallest is just an infant. Couldn't we wait until tomorrow to— I'm afraid not, Mrs. Wilkins, Crawford interrupted firmly. The weather is turning again, and we need to make progress toward the fort before the next storm hits. We'll leave within the hour. With mounting dread, Sarah realized they had run out of options. If they led Crawford to the actual Apache camp, the consequences could be devastating. If they tried to maintain their deception, they would soon be exposed. Either way, disaster loomed. Morning Thunder's hand brushed against hers briefly, a gesture of reassurance so subtle the soldiers wouldn't notice. We go, he said quietly. Get children. 20 tense minutes later, they were riding north, Sarah behind Morning Thunder on one horse, with Lieutenant Crawford and Corporal Davis following close behind. The rest of the patrol had split up, 2 men remaining with the injured Jenkins, 3 following the tracks that might lead to the Apache camp. Sarah leaned forward, whispering urgently, "What are we going to do? We can't lead them to the camp." "Trust me," Morning Thunder replied, his voice barely audible over the horse's hoofbeats. Have plan. They rode in silence after that, Morning Thunder leading them on a circuitous route that Sarah recognized as deliberately misleading, doubling back, crossing streams where tracks would be hidden, taking unnecessarily difficult paths that slowed their progress. Your camp seems well hidden, Scout, Crawford called after nearly an hour of this winding journey. Safety first, Morning Thunder replied without turning. Many dangers in mountains. Sarah could sense the lieutenant's growing suspicion. His patience wouldn't last much longer. When they crested a small ridge, Morning Thunder reined in suddenly. Below them lay a small clearing with a crude lean-to shelter. Smoke rose from a tiny fire, and beside it, Sarah's breath caught, sat Thomas, tending the flames while the twins played nearby. Thomas, she gasped, unable to comprehend how her son could be here, miles from the Apache camp. Morning Thunder pressed his hand against hers in warning. Camp, he announced to Crawford. Children there. As they descended into the clearing, Thomas looked up. His eyes widened at the sight of the soldiers, but when they met Morning Thunder's gaze, the boy gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Ma," he called, playing his part with remarkable composure. "You're back early. Did something happen?" Sarah dismounted shakily, embracing her son while trying to understand what was happening. "Thomas, where are your sisters?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Emma took Ruth and John to gather firewood," he replied promptly. "They should be back soon." Lieutenant Crawford surveyed the humble camp with narrowed eyes. "This is where you've been staying?" he asked Sarah. "Seems rather primitive." "We make do with what we have, Lieutenant," she answered, following Thomas's lead, though her mind raced with questions. Morning Thunder moved about the camp with deliberate familiarity, checking the lean-to, adjusting stones around the fire. Sarah noticed subtle signs that the site had been hastily prepared: fresh-cut branches, newly arranged stones, tracks that were too numerous for just her children. "Your other children?" Crawford prompted. As if on cue, Emma emerged from the trees, baby Ruth bundled against her chest and John trailing behind with a few small branches. Their appearance was so perfectly timed that Sarah knew it couldn't be coincidence. The reunion was emotional and genuine, Sarah clutching her children close, overwhelmed with relief and confusion in equal measure. Emma, always quick to adapt, played along seamlessly, greeting the soldiers with appropriate wariness. "Lieutenant Crawford says we must go to Fort Collins," Sarah explained to her children. "The frontier is too dangerous right now." Thomas's face fell convincingly. "But what about Uncle William?" "We were going to his homestead when the trail's cleared. The army will send word to your uncle," Crawford assured him. "Now, gather your belongings. We need to rejoin the patrol before dark." As the children collected their meager possessions from the lean-to, Sarah managed a moment alone with Morning Thunder. "How?" she whispered urgently. "Singing Bird," he replied. "Saw soldiers from Ridge, guessed danger. Brought children here on hidden path while we distracted soldiers." His eyes held a mixture of pride and sadness. "Your Thomas, brave boy, understood quickly, helped prepare this place." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude toward Singing Bird, whose quick thinking had saved them from immediate disaster. "And the camp? Will your men lead the soldiers away?" "Yes. False trails, cold campfires to find. By tonight, tribe moves deeper into mountains." His expression darkened. "But you go to fort now, cannot prevent." The reality of their situation crashed over Sarah. She was being separated from the Apache community that had become a second family, from Morning Thunder. "You're coming with us?" she asked, though she suspected the answer. He shook his head slightly. To fort means questions, papers checked. Too dangerous. But if you don't come, they'll be suspicious. They might... I slip away before fort, he interrupted. Scout's privilege. Crawford expects this. Sarah wanted to argue, to find another solution, but the children were returning with their bundles, and Crawford was watching them closely. Ready, Mrs. Wilkins? The lieutenant called. Almost, she replied, then turned back to Morning Thunder. I can't just leave like this. The tribe, the teaching, everything must, he said simply, for children's safety, for tribe's safety. The weight of their shared responsibility silenced her protests. He was right, and they both knew it. Sometimes survival demanded painful choices. As they prepared to depart, a rider appeared on the ridge, one of Crawford's men returning from following the tracks. Lieutenant, he called, dismounting hurriedly. We found signs of a camp, but it's been abandoned. Cold fire pits, trampled snow. They've moved on, sir. Crawford frowned. How many would you estimate? 20, maybe 30 people. Definitely Apache from the snowshoe patterns. But they're long gone, heading west, as the woman said. Sarah felt a wave of relief, quickly tempered by the lieutenant's calculating expression. Interesting timing, he remarked. Almost as if they were warned. His eyes moved from Sarah to Morning Thunder, but he didn't press the accusation further. We'll discuss this more at the fort. Let's move out. The journey back to the soldiers' camp was tense and largely silent. Sarah rode with baby Ruth secured to her chest, while the other children were distributed among the soldiers' horses. Morning Thunder led the way, his straight back revealing nothing of his thoughts. At the main camp, preparations were made for the journey to Fort Collins. Crawford estimated they would reach the fort in 2 days if the weather held. Jenkins was well enough to ride, though still suffering headaches from his fall. As evening approached, Sarah managed another brief moment with Morning Thunder while the soldiers were occupied with dinner preparations. Tonight, he murmured, when camp sleeps, meet at lightning-struck pine we passed. 1 hour after moon rises, Sarah nodded slightly, her heart racing at the implication. The children. Bring them. Have horses waiting. He hesitated, then added, choice will be yours. Before she could ask what he meant, Crawford approached, and they separated smoothly. That night, Sarah lay awake beneath the stars, her children huddled close for warmth. The soldiers had provided extra blankets, but insisted they all remain in the open, ostensibly for their safety. In reality, Sarah knew it was to prevent exactly what she was contemplating. She watched the moon rise, a silver crescent climbing slowly above the mountains. 1 hour Morning Thunder had said, 1 hour until a meeting that would force a choice she wasn't sure she was prepared to make. Nearby, a soldier shifted in his sleep. Another stoked the fire, his back to her as he added wood to the flames. Crawford had ordered watches throughout the night, standard procedure, he'd explained, though Sarah suspected it was as much to keep an eye on them as to guard against external threats. Morning Thunder had disappeared after dinner, supposedly to scout the trail ahead. Crawford had accepted this without comment, though his eyes had followed the Apache scout with unmistakable suspicion. Now, as the appointed hour approached, Sarah faced the most difficult decision of her life. Fort Collins meant safety, civilization, eventual reunion with her brother. It meant returning to the world she had known, where her children would have education and opportunities. But it also meant leaving behind the community that had taken them in at their most vulnerable. It meant abandoning the teaching that had become so meaningful, the cultural exchange that had enriched all their lives. Most painfully, it meant parting from Morning Thunder, perhaps forever. Sarah gazed at her sleeping children, these resilient young souls who had already endured so much loss. Thomas and Emma had thrived among the Apache, learning skills and perspectives that would serve them well throughout their lives. The twins had found playmates who didn't care about the color of their skin or the language they spoke. Even baby Ruth had been embraced by the tribe, cooed over by grandmothers whose own grandchildren had been lost to disease or conflict. The moon climbed higher. The time for decision was approaching. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, searching for clarity in the quiet of her heart. When she opened them again, she knew what she had to do, not just for herself, but for her children, for Morning Thunder, and for the future that awaited them all, whatever path they chose. The lightning-struck pines stood like a sentinel against the night sky, its jagged crown reaching toward the stars. Sarah approached it cautiously, her children following in a silent line behind her. She had roused them with whispers, explaining only that they needed to move quickly and quietly. Thomas had understood immediately. The younger ones followed with sleepy trust. The soldier on watch had nodded off, making their escape from camp easier than she dared hope. Still, every shadow seemed to harbor danger, every snapping twig a potential alarm. Morning Thunder emerged from the darkness like a spirit, materializing so suddenly that Emma gasped. 3 horses stood behind him, reins gathered loosely in his hand. "You came," he said simply, relief evident in his voice. "We came," Sarah confirmed, "but I still don't know what choice you're offering." Morning Thunder's eyes reflected starlight as he studied her face. "Tribe moves to summer grounds early, deep canyon, good water, hidden from soldiers, paths." He paused. "You could come with us." The offer hung in the cold night air, breathtaking in its implications. "Or," Sarah prompted, "or I take you to Brother's homestead. 3 days ride south. Army won't find you there before spring thaw." Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing upon her. Neither option included Fort Collins, she noticed. Neither option offered the security of civilization as she had once known it. "What about the soldiers?" Thomas asked practically. "Won't they search for us when they find us gone?" Morning Thunder nodded. "Yes, but think we taken by hostiles? Search wrong places." Sarah considered their situation with clarity born of necessity. Fort Collins meant safety, yes, but also separation from Morning Thunder, from the Apache community that had saved them, from the cultural exchange that had enriched their lives. Her brother's homestead offered family connection, but isolation from the tribe. Going with the Apache meant embracing a life utterly different from anything she had imagined for herself or her children. "Children need stability," Morning Thunder said, as if reading her thoughts. "Need family." "They have family," Sarah replied softly. "Me." "And they found another kind of family among your people." She turned to her children, kneeling to meet their eyes. "This is a big decision, and you should have a voice in it. We can go to Uncle William's homestead, or we can stay with Morning Thunder's people." "Stay with the Apache," Emma said immediately, no trace of hesitation in her young voice. The twins nodded enthusiastic agreement. "And Swiftwater still needs to teach me to shoot the bow," James added earnestly. Only Thomas remained thoughtful, his young face serious beyond his years. "What about teaching, Ma? You were helping them learn English." "I could continue that," Sarah acknowledged, "if Chief Tall Elk still wants me to." "He wants," Morning Thunder confirmed. "All tribe sees value now, even Swift Knife." Thomas considered this, then nodded decisively. "But then I think we should stay with them, at least until the summer. We can always find Uncle William later." Sarah hugged her son, recognizing the maturity in his reasoning. Only Ruth remained, too young to voice an opinion, but cooing happily in the familiar presence of Morning Thunder, reaching for him with pudgy hands. It seems we're all in agreement, Sarah said, rising to her feet. A strange peace settled over her, as if the decision had been made long before this moonlit meeting. Perhaps it had, in small moments of connection and understanding, in shared hardships and quiet conversations beside winter fires. Morning Thunder's expression softened. You choose difficult path. I choose a meaningful one, Sarah corrected, for all of us. They mounted quickly, the children distributed between the 3 horses. As they prepared to ride, Sarah looked back toward the soldiers' distant camp, a flicker of firelight barely visible through the trees. Will they be all right? She asked. Jenkins and the others? Yes, Morning Thunder assured her. Find their way to fort when storm passes. And my brother, he thinks we're dead. Send message when safe. Apache traders visit settlements in summer, can carry letter. Sarah nodded, accepting this. William would worry, but he would eventually know they were alive and well. That would have to be enough for now. They rode through the night, following hidden trails known only to the Apache. By dawn, they had covered many miles, moving ever deeper into the mountains, where soldiers rarely ventured. Near midday, they crested a ridge and saw the tribe below, a caravan of people and horses moving steadily along a sheltered valley. Singing Bird was the first to spot them, raising her arm in greeting. Word spread quickly, and soon the entire tribe had stopped, waiting for them to descend. Sarah saw many familiar faces. Walking Bear with his medicine staff, Grey Wolf leaning on a younger warrior's arm, children waving excitedly as they recognized their teacher and playmates. Even Swift Knife stood watching their approach, his expression unreadable but no longer openly hostile. Chief Tall Elk came forward as they reached the valley floor. The teacher returns, he said in English, his weathered face solemn. If you'll still have us, Sarah replied. The chief studied her for a long moment, then nodded. You risked much to protect our people from soldiers. This we remember. He turned to Morning Thunder. You were right about this woman. Her heart is strong. That evening, as the tribe made camp in a sheltered grove, Singing Bird approached Sarah with a gift, a beautifully tanned deerskin dress adorned with subtle beadwork. For teaching our children, she explained, for choosing to stay when you could go. Sarah accepted the garment with deep gratitude, recognizing it as more than clothing. It was a symbol of acceptance, of belonging. Later, as her children slept soundly among their Apache friends, Sarah stood with Morning Thunder at the edge of camp, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. No regrets? He asked quietly. Sarah considered the question seriously. I won't pretend it will be easy. There will be challenges we can't foresee, adjustments we'll all need to make. She looked at him. But no regrets. Morning Thunder nodded, a rare smile softening his features. Do you teach children English? I teach you Apache, fair trade. Sarah laughed softly, the sound carrying on the night breeze. More than fair. They stood together in comfortable silence, neither needing to define what had grown between them. There would be time for that, for exploring the connection that had begun in a desperate rescue and deepened through shared purpose and mutual respect. For now, it was enough to stand side by side, two people from different worlds who had found common ground. 10 years later, the summer sun beat down on the valley, turning the creek waters to liquid silver and the meadow grasses to gold. Near the junction where two rivers met, a cluster of buildings stood, some in the traditional Apache style, others of milled lumber in the white settler fashion. In the largest structure, open on all sides to catch the breeze, children sat in a semicircle, slates and books in hand. Sarah, her hair now streaked with silver but her eyes as bright as ever, moved among them, correcting here, encouraging there. Some children were Apache, others from nearby homesteads and settlements. All learned side by side, switching easily between English and Apache as the lesson required. "Ma!" Emma called from the doorway. At 18, she had grown into a confident young woman who moved between cultures with graceful ease. "The traders are here from Denver. They've brought new books and letters." Sarah dismissed the class with a smile, watching as the children scattered to enjoy the remainder of the beautiful day. 10 years had brought many changes to this place they now called Two Rivers, changes she could never have imagined on that desperate winter day when morning thunder found her family dying in the snow. What had begun as a simple exchange, shelter and food for English lessons, had evolved into something far more significant. Two Rivers had become a place of cultural meeting, where Apache children learned reading and writing alongside settler children who learned tracking and traditional crafts. Parents who might never have spoken to one another in the old world now traded goods and knowledge, finding common purpose in their children's future. It hadn't always been easy. There had been setbacks, misunderstandings, moments when the fragile peace seemed ready to shatter. The outside world had not always approved of their experiment in coexistence, but they had persevered, building something that stood as living proof that understanding was possible, that bridges could be built between the most disparate shores. Morning Thunder appeared beside her, a distinguished figure now recognized by territorial officials as an important diplomatic liaison. The deep bond between them had grown over the years into a partnership that defied conventional definition, not quite marriage in either the white or Apache tradition, but a union of hearts and minds that had weathered every storm. "Good trading this season," he said, handing her a letter bearing her brother William's familiar handwriting. "Your brother sends regards, says he visits when harvest ends." Sarah accepted the letter with a smile. William had initially been shocked by her choice to remain with the Apache, but over time he had come to understand and even respect the community she had helped build. "Thomas sends word too," Morning Thunder added, "does well at Eastern School." Pride filled Sarah's heart at the mention of her eldest son, now studying law at a prestigious university. He had carried the lessons of Two Rivers with him, the value of different perspectives, the importance of cultural understanding, the strength found in diversity. The twins had chosen different paths. James had embraced Apache ways completely, apprenticing with the tribe's most skilled hunters and trackers. John had become Morning Thunder's right hand in diplomatic matters, his facility with languages making him an invaluable interpreter. Emma taught alongside her mother, while Ruth, no longer a baby, but a curious 11-year-old, seemed determined to absorb every bit of knowledge from both worlds. As the summer day waned toward evening, Sarah walked with Morning Thunder to the hilltop where they often ended their days. Below them, Two Rivers spread out in peaceful productivity, a vision realized through perseverance and mutual respect. "And sometimes I still wonder," Sarah admitted, "what would have happened if you hadn't found us that day?" Morning Thunder took her hand, a gesture that had become natural over the years. "Cannot know roads not walked," he said with the wisdom that had first drawn her to him. "Can only be grateful for path that brought us here." Sarah nodded, watching as the setting sun painted the valley in hues of gold and amber. From disaster had come opportunity. From desperate need had come profound connection. The bridge they had built between their worlds stood as testament to what was possible when compassion triumphed over fear, when understanding replaced suspicion. And though the wider world might not yet be ready for such lessons, Here in this peaceful valley, they had created a model for a different future, one built on the simple, revolutionary idea that humanity's differences need not divide us, but could instead enrich us all.